Welcome to NEK VT Rocks, and my guest today is
Ray Perkins.
And Ray is a local educator and author, and in fact 3 of his books are right in front of him, but I gather there's a brand new one that we're going to hear about.
Definitely.
What got you into this?
Back actually when I started teaching, way back in the 80s, I was doing some writing with my students, and from that came the first book, The Mystery of the Silver Statue. And I found that students, middle school students, and a little younger, really enjoyed the story. So over the years I worked on the silver statue and finally got it published by a local publishing company in Coventry.
Is that still there?
I'm not sure. Radiant Hen was the company.
I don't know if they're still in Coventry,
Yeah.
but I know that publishing company.
Right.
That's really cool.
Yeah.
I read one of your books. I haven't read the others.
Okay.
But I read it for the purpose of reviewing it for something. I loved it.
Oh, good.
And part of what I loved was, it was sort of so boy age appropriate. You could feel the young people in it. And it included so much local information. For kids living up here, it must be wonderful for them to read it.
I think that's part of why they enjoy it so much, and the other part is that they tend to move fairly quickly. So when it captures their attention, it keeps it, and I think that's what they enjoy.
Yeah. What gives you your ideas? Because there's obviously local fact in there, but there's a lot of fiction too.
Definitely. When I was at Linden State College, now Northern Vermont University, Linden, and studying there under a history teacher whose name was Graham Newell, Senator Graham Newell, and he taught a fabulous course on Vermont studies. And so taking one of his stories, because he had so many, about a silver statue, I kind of developed that into a story of my own. First of all, just a short, almost one chapter kind of summary. And then from there, kids were like, "Oh, we want to know more. We want to know more." So I just developed it into the story that it is, and then from there, being a history teacher for 30 years, and being a lover of mysteries, from way back when I was reading the Hardy Boys and Arthur Conan Doyle and those kind of stories, I just gravitated toward that, and I really wanted something. I realized that in teaching young boys, sometimes they don't like to read. Some boys don't.
Right.
And I decided that I would focus on capturing their attention and hopefully getting them to read more.
So you give them a little teaser and then direct them towards a book.
Absolutely.
That's great.
And with my knowledge of the area in the Northeast Kingdom, there are plenty of stories that I can write. I mean, I've got a new one in my head, and it's kind of swirling around about Lake Memphremagog. Yeah.
How long does it take you from the swirling around in your head to actually getting it onto paper and into a publisher's hands?
Years. The first one was really because I was teaching and raising a family. It was over 20 years, just kind of working on it off and on, and coming back to it, and then finding a publisher. And each time I would get rejected, it would be like, and just set it aside, and then eventually come back to it. As I told the story to my students in 6th grade. Hey, there's a story about a silver statue that was lost by Rogers Rangers, and from there it just kind of morphed into what it is today.
Did they even know who Rogers Rangers were?
They did, because that was part of our studies of the French and Indian War. And they were very fascinated that someone from history from the late 1700s or mid 1700s could actually have been in this area and would have left something behind.
Right. I have to read that one.
Yeah, I'm really partial to that one because obviously it was my first one.
Right.
But then the last one was so much fun, The Mystery of the Haunted Opera House.
The Haskell, obviously.
Which is the Haskell, definitely. And there's a great story behind that.
Yeah.
I read in the local paper that some ghost hunters would be at the Haskell,
Right.
the paranormal investigators of New England.
Mhm.
And I read this short article, and they said, and it said they're going to be there that night. And so I said to my son, grab your camera, we're
Let's
going
go.
up. And luckily we only lived a mile away, and we were in Derby, living in Derby
Yeah.
Line at that point, and my son was, I think, a middle schooler. And so we went up and we crashed the party, so to
Hey,
speak.
it's good.
Yeah, and they were so wonderful. They were like, oh, what are you doing here? Oh, there's a connection. I used to work with your older son down in Burlington, and you know, and so it kind of went from there to show us what you do, and let's talk about this. And
Do they know you wrote the book?
yes, yeah, very excited that their names were in the book, and
I bet.
they were given a shout out for what they do.
Yeah. Did you find any ghosts that night?
We didn't stay. We were kind of kicked out after a bit because they wanted to do their thing.
Sure.
And they heard some odd noises, but nothing they could really pinpoint. But the anecdotal stories are fascinating.
Well, I mean, if you go to the Haskell and you're sitting there watching a play and that bat suddenly comes flying out, cruises around the audience and then goes back in, of course the place is haunted.
Absolutely.
How could it not be?
So
It's really cool.
Using that as the premise of the story, I had to find a mystery because I always have to
Sure.
find a mystery to the story that the boys get to solve. And the boys, which is another interesting story, are really developed from my own older sons, who are now in their 40s, or early 40s.
Yeah.
And they, you know, kind of use them as the characters in the story. That's why one of them has a health issue, and he's had to deal with that for years and years since he was 5 years old, much like BT in the story.
How many sons do you have?
I have 3 sons and 2 daughters. Yeah.
And where are your daughters in the book? Come on.
Actually, in the as the series progresses, they show up as characters.
Do they just show up, or is there some character development and important role, or is it just the boys?
Mainly, it's the boys, but they kind of show up in a different way because our 3 younger children we adopted. So they show up as adopted children who are siblings of BT or Jimmy. So I've kind of moved them into the story in that direction. But I also realized that after the first book, I really did need to bring more variety. So I brought in a couple of girls who continue in the next book, and are really, their characters are beginning to develop more so.
Yeah, I mean, in a lot of ways, obviously I noticed that the central characters were male and that the girls were peripheral.
Right.
But that's also true at that age group anyway.
Yeah, I think so.
They tend to be gender specific. The boys hang together, the girls hang
Definitely,
together.
for sure.
And tend to do they don't tend to work so cooperatively
Right,
at that
right,
age.
right.
That would be as they get older. Do they age in your books?
Yes. By the time BT and Jimmy are in the opera house, they are now in high school. So they
Very
are moving
different
along.
ball game, yeah.
And I think in the next one, they'll be a little further along.
Yeah. One of the interesting things about the Harry Potter books, which sort of ties in, is when Harry Potter started, he was a little kid.
Right.
And then he ends the series as obviously a much older kid, and then goes into the future. But kids coming along now who start sort of with the later books that the initial kids read at an age when it was age appropriate are totally weirded out by the older Harry.
Yeah.
It's fascinating.
Yeah, and I think that's likely the case with my own children, with the younger ones, because we every night would read the Harry Potter stories to them, and so they were just so into that character.
Yeah. And as he got older, those kids would relate to it.
Definitely.
Yeah. Do you ever get that kind of feedback about your books?
I get a lot of feedback because being an educator, I'm able to be in, or was able to be in schools and talk to kids and really develop the stories or the characters based on feedback I got from kids. In my first book, it was, I read the story to them, and I said, I need you to help me out here. And they were so excited. They were like, yes, we're going to help out an author. And so they definitely gave me some good feedback. You know, why is this happening? What's this about? I don't really understand. So then I'd have to go back and do some editing.
Yeah. Yeah. Clearly, you've been a 12-year-old boy, but it's hard to think back with it really into that role, as opposed to the observer.
Definitely it is, and I love this quote by Mark Twain, who said, you know, at some point in every young boy's life, they just have to go out looking for buried treasure.
Yes.
Like, oh yes, for sure. I can remember as a young boy, on my grandfather's farm in Westmore, and my grandfather would say, well, you know, my father, he buried money in glass jars all over the yard during the Depression. And so guess what my brothers and I were doing?
Digging
up
that yard. Did you find any?
Never did.
Oh.
So, and I'm sure my grandfather was sitting back there laughing like crazy, because who knows, he was a great storyteller. And
he could have been really kind and buried some just for you to find.
Yes.
Wouldn't that have been fun?
That would have been great.
Yeah. As I read the book, it sort of struck me, and even more so now, and we were talking about this briefly just before we started, was this would be the perfect time to do some groups around that book. There's so little happening right now because of all the COVID drama.
Oh, for sure.
That to have some way, and that actually could be online. It doesn't have to be totally in person. It would be more fun to do in person.
It would, but you could certainly do that with schools are using Google Chats and Google Meet.
Or Zoom or whatever they're all using.
And whatever they're using these days. Certainly would work.
You'd think that maybe Derby Library would be interested in picking that up, because they are so creative with their children's programming. But maybe Mac, where you're also going to be selling those books, would be interested in picking that up.
Definitely. I've done, actually did one last year before the whole COVID thing developed, with a group from fourth grade group in New Hampshire, and we Skyped, and it was a blast. They were very excited. I only had a certain amount of time, and a particular time I could meet, and they were going to be out at recess, and it wasn't going to work, and they all just, after reading the first book, they all decided, no, we want to meet the author, and so they gave up their recess so that we could chat.
Huh. So the school read the book with them?
Correct. Yes. Yeah.
Are your books in a lot of schools?
I think, in quite a few schools here in the Northeast Kingdom, particularly because I worked in the Orleans Central School District.
Right.
More of those schools.
Are they still using them?
I believe so.
That would be really neat to do.
Yeah, I find them in some libraries and just kind of scattered around classrooms.
Yeah. You could do a sort of buried treasure hunt for one of your books.
And actually, a few years ago, when the bookstore was down here on Main Street.
Would not.
Would not.
Yeah.
I did a reading and we did a little bit of a treasure hunt with the kids.
Yeah.
That was fun.
Yeah, that would be such fabulous use for the hole. We have this whopping great hole in the middle of Main Street.
Yeah, wouldn't it?
Yeah, it really would.
Absolutely. Great ideas.
Yeah.
Keep them coming.
Hey, you market them, why not? That hole needs to be used.
Yes, for sure.
And it really would be. And I would think you could get enough adults to be involved, just to sort of supervise and make sure they don't all climb up the rocks and fall off. Or those little trees. Or that chimney. There has to be some story connected with that chimney.
With that chimney, yeah. What is it? It's a mystery.
Yeah, exactly. And now you've moved on to an adult story.
Well, I thought I would try my hand at adult fiction. And so a few years ago, I came across, was actually looking for ideas for my BT and Jimmy series. And I came across an interesting article about something called spy chips. And I decided that after doing some research that I would try my hand at adult fiction and developed a thriller, which I call today Spy Chip Armageddon. And I use this area as a locale, as well as Chittenden County, but then all over the country, from Alaska to California to Vieques Island in Puerto Rico, in Washington, D.C.
Wow.
And so these characters, Quan and Jackson, just kind of travel the country trying to figure out what's going on and stay one step ahead of a really nefarious group who are determined to take over the world using spy chips. And the scary thing is these chips are out there. They're called RFID, or radio frequency identification devices, and people are even inserting them in their bodies, particularly
They're
in their
certainly
hands.
inserting them in their cats and dogs.
And their animals as well.
They microchip them, yeah.
And people don't realize that many of the clothes they wear or items that they buy have these chips in them, so they can be tracked.
Yeah, isn't that wonderful?
Yes, yeah.
That's actually a very creepy story all by itself.
Absolutely.
Never mind what you just did are going to do with it.
So I had to, using kind of that information and that research, I talked to the author of Spy Chips and decided that, I could write a mystery or thriller about this item and kind of morph it into something even bigger than it is right now.
It's a growing field.
Yeah. And so that was my idea, and it took about 4 years to develop that, because I was also working full time.
Right. And now it's just been published, right?
Just been published, and I've published that on my own through Amazon, and so people can find it on Amazon, Spy Chip Armageddon. But I'd love for people to go to my website, which is mysteryforme.com, and it's the number 4, so it's Mystery for Me. And then they can kind of interact a little with the website and also contact me through that website.
So you could sort of start some spy group from that.
Absolutely, yes. Yeah.
That would be fun.
Yeah. So and I like to travel. My wife and I do, and so through some of our travels, that's why I've included some places in the book that.
So you really knew the geography
there. So
there.
kind of knew the area. Yeah.
Yeah. So now that you've finished that book and you're waiting to get it into your hot little hands, do you have a new one in mind?
I do. I have a new one for the BT and Jimmy Kids series, and that one, I think I'm gonna. I have a title. I know what it is. It's The Mystery of the Memphremagog Monster, and I absolutely.
Memphrey's real.
Memphrey is real. Memphrey is out there.
I know.
And I also have an idea swirling around my head for the next book in the Jackson LaPointe series. Jackson is the main character, and it's told from his point of view. Spy Chip Armageddon is. And so the next book, I woke up one morning and said, what was I dreaming about? And then I realized it was alien DNA. And I'm like, wow, I got
That Microsoft
the story is
chip
here.
is doing something to me.
The story is here, and it's just, I'm kind of, last week I was somewhere waiting for someone in the car, and I'm always on my cell phone with my notes, jotting things down that I hear, phrases, ideas, sentences for the book, and things like that, and then I had my phone here, and I had my pad here, and I'm writing away, and I accidentally clicked my notes and lost them all.
Oh.
I'm like, oh my God, what did I just do?
Wow.
And so I was terrified. I said, I can't replicate this.
Right.
And I got home, and I said to my daughter, Kendra, is there anything you can do? Can you help me? Being a mid-20s young lady, she's very astute at things, technology.
Right.
And she said, yeah, Dad, I can just Google it. And so she Googled it, figured out how she could get it back, and got back all of my notes.
Wow.
Yeah. So I was so excited. And so...
That's both the good news and that's a tad scary, that somewhere out there is everything you ever
has
thought
everything.
wrote.
You know, when they say, yeah, it's in the cloud.
Yeah.
Everything's in the cloud.
And you, I assume, thought you were saving it actually to your phone, not to the cloud.
Right. And it is scary to think about.
Yeah. And now we have Alexa in our lives too.
Don't get me started. So yeah, it was the news story is, it's there. I'm writing stuff down crazily. I haven't really, I have an opening chapter, and now I'm just getting started on getting words on paper. But I took an online class a few years ago from kind of a fairly famous author, James Patterson. And so as I worked my way through the class, the biggest thing that I took from it is make that outline. Make that outline, know where you're going. Because I didn't in my first two books, The Silver Statue and The Brick Kingdom. And sometimes I'd really get stuck. And because I didn't know where I was going to end up.
Right.
And so that was a huge help.
Isn't that going to be true for a lot of books anyway? You know where you start, but they take you where it ends.
And they take you places, right. That's why in Spy Chip Armageddon, I pretty much had the story outlined until, but I didn't know the ending.
Right.
And the ending was kind of like, as my wife and sort of part-time editor reads it, and she said, I think you should end it right here. But there was more to it, and so I had to kind of move along, and because the story was telling me it wasn't done.
Right. Yeah. In the inner voice or the inner drumbeat or however it is you get that message is fascinating.
Yeah, it really is, because you can get so focused on where you're going.
Right.
And then sometimes when I like to step back for a while and just say, okay, is this the direction I want to go in?
Right.
And sometimes it's not. Sometimes it's just veer off.
Do you ever cruise Facebook?
Oh, yes.
Some of the memes that are going around right now, the conspiracy theory ones,
yes.
was fit straight into your book.
For sure. Definitely. And the whole, the whole idea of our privacy and government oversight of things, just, it is pretty scary. And to write that, I really had to delve into privacy issues.
Right. There is none. deal with it.
Pretty much.
I know.
Pretty much. People don't, really, I don't know if they don't realize or it's easier not to think about
Right.
that we have no privacy.
Right.
Mm-hmm. So.
And then if you add something like a little chip to that.
Absolutely. And, just as a little something to get people interested in spy chip, this Kabbalah group who is determined to take over the financial world, and not
Mhm.
only that, but the human world as
Mhm.
well, have developed something beyond the spy chip that people will not realize they have in their bodies,
Right.
which is kind of scary and I think kind of truthful.
Yeah.
Somewhere down the line.
Maybe not so far down the line.
Absolutely.
And in some ways, this has been quite a long time coming. Were you ever an X-Files fan?
Yes.
I loved the X-Files
Yes.
for all kinds of crazy reasons. But they were looking at microchip implantation way back
Way
then.
back. Yes.
So it's taken a while to get to here. So who knows what else is lurking amongst our molecules.
Out there. Absolutely. What is out there?
Yeah. So now, discussing this, we've obviously formed another conspiracy theory.
Yeah, theory.
Let's see how many people pick it up.
Right. So many ideas from books, and when I do book talks, whether it's kids or adults,
Mhm.
they all give me ideas. Well, I think you should write about this, or have you thought about this?
Mhm.
Which is
How are you
great.
going to do some readings for your adult book, given that we're all supposed to be locked down right now?
That's a struggle.
Yeah.
It definitely is. I'm not sure how that's going to play out.
Yeah. Because I'm not sure that a Zoom reading is going to have quite the same
Quite
impact.
the effect, yeah.
Yeah. Although, you never know. Maybe a little sinister music in the background.
There you go.
But again, that might be something that either Larry's bookstore, I'm totally blocking its name, Nevermore Books,
Mhm.
or Mac would be able to help you with.
Yeah, that would be great.
Yeah.
Yeah, that would be fun.
We're all ready for some fun up here.
Absolutely. Yeah.
We're so over ready for it. We've sort of been cheated of our summer.
So yeah, it seems like.
Yeah.
Yeah. And not knowing what the future is going to bring.
Right. So why not have a little horror?
Yeah. Little mystery.
Introduced.
Yeah, some thrills.
But I think adults are as into readings and book discussion as kids are.
I think so. Yeah. I have a group that is involved in that now, down in New Hampshire, and they're supposedly reading the book at this point as we speak, and I haven't heard from them, but we'll see what they, their thoughts are.
So they got their hands on an early copy.
The ebook
Yeah.
is out.
Oh.
Yes. Yeah.
So
And that's-
anybody with a Kindle can pick it up right now.
Yes, right through Amazon.
Those of us who only do paper.
I have found that people will say, and I've sent or requested of people, well, would you read this and do a review, because that's a great way to get people to buy the book. And many have said, well, I only do print.
Yeah.
I don't read the.
It's not the
I
same.
don't read electronic copies. Yeah, and I kind of
Yeah.
go back and forth.
I read newspapers online all the time,
Really?
but not fiction.
Huh.
Fiction has to surround me in a way that a screen doesn't let me.
And do you think that's an age thing, that people
No.
who grew up with it in their hands want to keep it in their hands?
I don't. Maybe there may be a piece of that, but I have absolutely no issue about reading newsprint online.
Which is interesting.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think it's more about a distancing thing. Fiction, I want to be in it.
You want to be right there.
Yeah.
Hmm.
I frequently don't want to be right there for newsprint.
Absolutely. Distance yourself.
Yeah, and I think that that's a way of doing it. I may not always articulate it in quite that way.
Okay.
I think very often that's a piece of it. I really don't want fiction online. It's not the same.
And I've wondered myself about that.
Yeah.
You know, what prompts people to prefer one or the other?
Yeah. Yeah, and I'm sure you've asked that question of many people.
I have.
And you've probably had as many answers
absolutely.
as you have people.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah, and maybe there is an age thing in it too.
That would be interesting to see if more millennials and you know the younger people really prefer the electronics.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, I'm sure it's convenient, and it's really convenient to be able to plug it into your car.
Absolutely.
And have it talk to you as you're driving somewhere.
Yes, definitely.
So I can sort of really appreciate that.
Mm-hmm.
But, you know, if I'm reading a book, I want to read the book.
In a cozy chair. And
Yeah. In fact,
Yeah.
I think it was Larry from Nevermore Books
Mm-hmm.
said that print sales were actually going up now.
That's
Which
great
in terms
to
of
hear.
your sales should be reassuring.
Yes, correct.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Are you the only writer in your family?
My oldest son has done some writing, and he sometimes will write for companies that publish short stories or articles online. Other than that, no, I have a daughter in New Jersey who is an artist and makes her living doing that.
So the creatives gene there is that just moved
Well,
in different ways.
would be but she was adopted, so
Mhm.
it was a leap. You know, if I could do what she could do, it would be amazing.
Yeah.
Because she's an amazing artist. And another who is a teacher, and then one who works for at the airports for TSA.
Mhm.
So no real writers.
No other writers.
No.
Not yet, anyway.
No.
Yeah. We are just about out of time.
Okay.
I said it goes really, really
I
fast.
sure did. I enjoyed it.
I'm really looking forward to reading the two I haven't read of those books
Right.
and your adult one.
All right.
I think I'm probably going to be totally creeped out by the adult one, but that's a good thing. That's what that's what you're aiming
That's
for.
what I'm hoping. Yes.
Yeah. Thank you so much for doing this, and
thank you for having me.
reminding people that they can find your books both at MAC on Main Street, that's Memory Magog
Mhm.
Arts Collaborative,
Mhm.
which is now open again, and Nevermore Books, which
Right.
is on East Main Street and which is also open again.
Yes.
And online at
Mystery for Me,
Mystery
the number
for Me.
4, mysteryforme.com, or
Okay.
by just going to Amazon and
Yeah.
looking up the title of the
or
author.
putting your name in.
Yes.
Yeah. Thank you so much for doing this.
Well, thank you for having me.